The time has come to return to the world of Ravenpaw and Barley for the second entry in their manga trilogy, A Clan in Need. If you didn't see or don't remember the episode on Shattered Peace, the first entry, we left our two farm kitties off on a pretty rocky place last time, with their farm burnt down and taken over by sneaky ex-BloodClan cats and the two lakes they lived beside hating them. However, StarClan told them they could go on, and that Ravenpaw would always have allies in the clans. We'll have to see now just how much they can help. And before I get too far in, this is the manga page I'll be redrawing, which, as usual, was chosen by my patrons. A Clan in Need was released on March 23rd of 2010, the same day as Feigning Echoes, 4 months after Shattered Peace and The Fourth Apprentice, and a little more than 2 months before a certain field guide that we'll cover next time. Continuing from the first entry in this trilogy, A Clan in Need was written by Dan Jolie and illustrated by James L. Barry, and, as with all the mangas so far, the book begins with an anonymous Aaron Hunter note. In this one, the Aaron admits that, if pushed, they would say Ravenpaw is the warrior's character that has the most in common with them by personality, and that getting to revisit him has been a real treat. They also go into detail about poor Barley, who began with a very hard life that he really tried to put behind him, detailed in Cats of the Clans. Evidently, the return of some ex-BloodClan cats who have taken over Barley's home is reopening some old wounds, which isn't hard to imagine. The Aaron says that Barley is someone who doesn't want to fight, but who, over the course of this book, becomes a hero. And I am very excited to see that sort of journey play out, once we give a quick look to our cast. A Clan in Need has a total speaking cast of 33 cats, almost double the size of Shattered Peace, which makes sense considering, at the very least, we're likely returning to ThunderClan, which will have a much higher number of cats than the barn. In line with that, rather than the 92% from the first entry, the top 5 cats in this cast have only 77% of the lines. And while trying not to spoil too much, the cats who get the most lines after Ravenpaw and Barley themselves are some very familiar names, both from Ravenpaw's past and Barley's. We pick up right where we left off, with Ravenpaw waking up by the Moonstone. Barley, however, is still dreaming, and this time we get to see what his dream was. He's reliving his memories of BloodClan, him and Violet being discovered when they lived together in secret, being threatened by Scourge, and having both his brothers, now Scourge's lackeys, try to kill his sister as punishment. Barley wakes up with a start, and Ravenpaw tries to comfort him, already familiar with the fact that Barley often has this dream. Ravenpaw says they'll be safe in ThunderClan, but Barley is still unsure, and Ravenpaw knows it's because he doesn't like being around a lot of cats, regardless of the circumstances. With Ravenpaw's encouragement, though, Barley agrees to go and promises not to complain. Much. Gosh, I love these two. On the way to ThunderClan, they pass the barn and see the BloodClan cats patrolling around it like they own it. Ravenpaw promises Barley they will get their home back, answering the silent comments from them both. They also meet a WindClan patrol traveling through their territory, who says a cat named Crowkit is missing, and there have been rogues making trouble for ShadowClan and ThunderClan, which is why they're on edge. They part amicably, though, every cat knowing who Ravenpaw and Barley are and that they mean no harm. While Ravenpaw is enthusiastically showing Barley 4 trees, they find Crowkit, who said he wanted to show off that he could be a leader, but was, too small to climb the Great Rock. The barn cats return Crowkit just in time to stop a border skirmish between WindClan and ThunderClan. And though WindClan is very happy, Dustpelt believes for a while that Ravenpaw somehow joined WindClan and is now trying to follow them home as a spy. As a side note, the amount of unabashed distrust and aggression Dustpelt shows to Ravenpaw is one of the many reasons I never believed the one-off author statement saying they were siblings. And to this day, it isn't technically canon. While Ravenpaw's parents are confirmed to be Robinwing and Fuzzypelt thanks to a haphazard retcon in the recent Greystripe's vow, Dustpelt's parents, and relation to any of this family, is still only in the website's family tree, which is one of the least reliable sources for information we have, considering it pulls all its information from elsewhere and doesn't cite where it came from. Anyway, they make their way back to camp, and Ravenpaw is getting nostalgic for the familiar sights and routines of ThunderClan life. Ravenpaw and Barley are happily welcomed in, and Sandstorm immediately introduces them to her and Firestar's kits, before they meet Firestar himself, of course. Encouraged on by Firestar after they've had a short time to rest and eat, Ravenpaw admits they do need help, and tells him about the BloodClan cats who visited and then took over the barn. Firestar says they will do what they can, but asks Ravenpaw and Barley to stay and rest while he considers some things. While waiting, they see an injured ThunderClan cat come in after what was, apparently, another ambush. According to Firestar, raids from the Two Lake Place have been going on since Scourge died, and have become more frequent and dangerous recently. At this moment, he can't spare a patrol to help Ravenpaw, much as he might want to. He invites them to stay as long as they want, but he can't help them until he helps his clan. Ravenpaw and Barley try to help out on patrols and see first paw how the BloodClan cats jump down to steal all of a patrol's prey as soon as they have finished hunting. During the fight for their food, one of the BloodClan cats calls out to Barley, not by name, and he doesn't respond. More ThunderClan cats arrive and the BloodClan cats flee, taking the prey with them. ThunderClan has avoided more injuries, but they still don't have food. On the way back, Greystripe asks if Barley knew those cats, but he firmly denies it. Once they're alone, though, Ravenpaw asks if he knew about them from his time in BloodClan. Barley says he doesn't want to talk about it, as he put that part of his life behind him. Ravenpaw knows how sensitive a subject it is for him and is ready to drop the question, but Firestar arrives to ask directly if Barley knows anything that could help. Barley is angered and runs away, with only Ravenpaw going after him. Sandstorm tells her kits that they'll have to go hungry tonight, and Ravenpaw gently tells Barley he understands his history, but asks if they can really let ThunderClan suffer. Barley is completely silent, and remains as such into the next day. Ravenpaw ponders over things he could say to Barley, but doesn't like any of them and ends up doing nothing. Later in the day, though, Rainpaw comes in yelling that Sorrelpaw was hurt by the BloodClan cats, and Firestar immediately forms a patrol to go after her. Barley suddenly stands and says he'll go as well. Sorrelpaw gets back to camp, injured but alive, and Barley sees Rainpaw desperate to see if his sister will be okay. He recognizes the same feeling from when BloodClan nearly took his sister from him, and decides in that instant to help. In front of an entire group of warriors, and as hard as Ravenpaw knows this is for him, Barley shares everything he knows, that the cats that attacked were some of Scourge's closest advisors, with one of them being a guard named Snipe. He explains his information might be too old to help, which prompts Ravenpaw to ask if he thinks Velvet would help them, considering she's in the Tulay place and would have more recent knowledge. Barley is hesitant, but agrees to at least ask, knowing his sister wouldn't want cats to suffer if there was anything she could do. Barley and Ravenpaw head into the Tulay place together, each of them hating it, and manage to make their way to Violet's house undisturbed. They fill her in on everything, and it turns out she does know something. Word gets around through the different kitty pets, and she sometimes hears fighting in the alleys. After Scourge died, it had gotten better, but about a moon ago, it got worse again. She doesn't know much more than that now, but promises to try and find out as soon as possible who, if any one cat, is in charge. She first takes them to Mitzi, another kitty pet whose son was taken by BloodClan, apparently for recruitment into the revitalized group. Mitzi leads them to BloodClan's current hideout and then heads home, away from the danger. Barley tells Violet to go home too, now that they can bring ThunderClan here, but she is determined to come with them. They head back to ThunderClan, where Firestar announces they will attack tonight, uncharacteristically telling them to show no mercy. Ravenpaw immediately joins, and Barley won't leave his sister to go without him, so they both join the mission. They sneak back into BloodClan and quickly scare off the two outer guards before making their way inside. There, they see many cats, recruited or chosen to usher in the new generation of BloodClan. And at the front, giving everyone this speech, are Barley and Violet's brothers, Hoot and Jumper, or as they now call themselves, Snake and Ice. Firestar readies his clan, but before he can signal them to attack, Violet pads out alone, calling to her brothers. It's then when Ravenpaw realizes who Snake and Ice even are. They tell Violet they have no sister and don't recognize those names, insisting that kitty pets must bow before the leaders of BloodClan. Well, we know who that is now, at least. As the pack of BloodClan cats turns on Violet, Barley leaps out to protect her. Hoot, or Jumper, it's hard to tell, says he finally remembers them, as the cats he taught a lesson that they clearly need to learn again. Weak or feeble cats must die. Barley is, shockingly, the first cat to attack, and Firestar quickly gives the signal for ThunderClan to follow. The battle rages. Any hesitation Barley had before is gone, and Ravenpaw remarks to himself that while the BloodClan cats are fierce, they aren't warriors, and for one night, he, Barley, and Violet are. Gosh, I love this book sometimes. The clan wins, backing BloodClan into a corner, and Hoot and Jumper finally agree to speak with Barley and Violet, as they have gotten their attention. Firestar tells the siblings they don't have to do anything, but Barley says they should talk to them anyway, in the only language they understand. He launches himself at his brothers, with Violet quickly joining in until either Hoop or Jumper cries out for them to stop it. They desperately say they are Hoot and Jumper, they're siblings, remember? In order to gain sympathy at the last second. Barley does remember, and he says they are long overdue for this, before slashing them once again, which causes Hoot and Jumper to promptly turn on the cats they were recruiting, saying it's all their fault and Hoot and Jumper will help the clan take them down. The BloodClan cats are, amazingly enough, not happy with their supposed leaders turning on them and promptly drive them both away. Hoot and Jumper beg for Barley to protect them, but he asks why he should, considering they never protected him or Violet. He tells them to just go away. Mitzi's son Fritz is returned to his mom, Barley takes Violet back so he can say goodbye, and Ravenpaw returns to camp with ThunderClan. Firestar promises that as soon as his warriors are fit again, he'll send a patrol to help them reclaim their home too. Finally, that night, Barley returns and looks pensive. Apparently, Violet was dealing with it better than he was, but he has to wonder what comes next. Ravenpaw enthusiastically says that next is getting their home back, fighting for the farm they love. And Barley hesitantly says he thought Ravenpaw would want to stay in ThunderClan. He was a great warrior that night. Ravenpaw easily responds that that was never going to happen. Barley is his best friend. The barn is their home, and it belongs to them, not BloodClan. It's time for them to go and take it back. In the third and final entry of this story. There are definitely some elements to this book that read as filler. The opening 20 pages about reviewing the last book's contents, meeting WindClan, saving Crowkit on a whim, and stopping a mini skirmish between WindClan and ThunderClan neither challenges or grows our main characters, passes too quickly to be impactful, and doesn't have to do with the plot of even this book. WindClan isn't even one of the clans attacked by the BloodClan cats, and they and Crowkit won't be relevant for the rest of the trilogy. In a book with only about 100 pages, 20 suddenly becomes a full fifth of that, so that part of the story could have been trimmed down to make room for something else. Aside from that, the big thing that might read as filler is that A Clan in Needs ends in roughly the same place it starts, with Ravenpaw and Barley getting help from ThunderClan to drive out the BloodClan invaders from their barn. From a narrative perspective, it would have been very easy to have Firestar just willingly send a patrol with Ravenpaw and Barley, considering he not only knows and likes, but owes them. And saving ThunderClan from the BloodClan cats didn't directly help to further the main plot, since the cats at the barn had already split off from and don't listen to the current BloodClan. However, the point of this trilogy is not just driving rogues out of the barn. It is exploring these two characters' lives, relationship with each other, and how that relationship is tested when conflicts, especially those relating to each of their pasts, emerge. In the first story, Ravenpaw's relationship with the visitors and Barley's suspicion of them was a, albeit sloppy, tease to each of their pasts, and the encounter itself was a test of their relationship when their values didn't align. Now that they have each lost their home, and only recently regained their trust in each other, this story now puts us directly into the heart of their pasts and the conflicts they cause, putting Ravenpaw in welcoming ThunderClan where Barley fears he'll always want to stay, and putting Barley right in contact with the traumatic past that he was running from, so much so that he wouldn't share it with Ravenpaw. Through experiencing and conquering these obstacles, we earn more than a patrol from Firestar. We earn a new level of intimacy between Ravenpaw and Barley, and the certainty from each other that they can, in fact, trust each other, and move forward easier when they're working together. We even get to see some really beautiful moments thanks to the journey. Even though some small sections in this book are framed from Barley's point of view, most of it is still from Ravenpaw's, and we can see him understanding and gently reaching out to Barley in private, in places and ways he knows his best friend is comfortable with. Barley, in return, opens up to and shares things with Ravenpaw, showing how much closer he is to his roommate. That's not the sort of thing I'd call filler at all, and because their pasts were the text rather than the subtext of this book, we didn't have the problem of unexplained motivations for their behavior, like in the last entry. It honestly just ends up being a really sweet story between the two of them, letting us see matured or opened aspects of the characters that we didn't get to see in the original arc, with justifications for those changes in the situations where they find themselves. Barley isn't open and easygoing here because he's in crowds of cats facing off against the enemies and family he left behind long ago, and is asked to save a whole group of cats from those enemies. Instead, we see his anxieties, discomfort, cowardice, bravery, and even vengeful anger coming out in different moments. Ravenpaw, meanwhile, isn't a constantly nervous apprentice anymore. He has grown to be calm, confident, and joyful, but he uses a lot of his past sensitivity to make himself intuitive and careful with other cats' feelings, especially Barley's. It's why he is able to be there for Barley in the way that he needs, and still advocate for helping to save ThunderClan. These are cats he grew up with, some of which he loves, and he doesn't want to see them hurt. But he never once wavered in his care for and commitment to Barley in their life, whatever insecurities Barley had about his intentions. And playing against these two, I really enjoyed the portrayal of Violet, who, like Barley and Ravenpaw, has had time to change since her traumatic past. She is a foil for her brother, being much more confident, knowledgeable in the ways of her new home, determined to help others in the way she was helped, and highly empathetic for those also being hurt by the same situation. In that way, she is actually pretty similar to Ravenpaw, which might serve as further justification for why Barley loves both of them so much. On the other hand, we have the characterization of ThunderClan, chiefly Firestar, with a couple of other lines thrown in from several characters. Well, honestly, I couldn't have expected much. None of them betray their characterizations from the first arc, perhaps with the exception of Firestar sounding a bit too wise and stoic. That said, this certainly isn't the first book to ascribe that attitude to Firestar as soon as the first arc ended, so I can't blame it much. They serve as a collective setting and plot device for the story rather than getting much individual focus on their own, and for now, I think that's fine. Ravenpaw came here for help, not to reminisce, and he consistently had more focus on helping Barley or defeating BloodClan than bonding with his old clanmates. Besides, the first arc ThunderClan cast has had plenty of focus by this point, and I'm sure we will get more in the future, despite my best wishes. The plot itself was somewhat less interesting, considering how typical it is for warriors. The clans are on edge because they're, spin the wheel? Being attacked by rogues, and this is keeping them from their prey and strength. The solution is to find the rogues, fight them, win, and then everything will be back to normal, hooray! The fact that most of the hunger and repercussions have to be sped by for pacing reasons also isn't helping. But the element that most impacts the story is that individual ThunderClan cats don't have much presence here, and for the vast majority of the story's pages, the only BloodClan cats we see are faceless strangers. And someone called Snipe, who is never relevant or given any specific characterization elsewhere in the story. We don't have any characters to connect us to this specific conflict, so it rings hollow for much of the book, until the final scenes. Snipe means nothing to this cast, but you know who does? Hoot and Jumper, which is what I will call them, considering that's even what they admit their names are by the end. And the two of them, especially with the context from Cats of the Clans, are easily hateable villains. We know they were so eager for strength and power that they were willing to cut themselves off from and even kill their siblings to get it, and their willingness to follow even the most gruesome of orders got them special high places in Scourge's guard. Now, when Scourge, Bone, and possibly other high-ranking BloodClan cats are gone, they have taken over as much as they can, carrying on in the methods they were taught and either hiring or kidnapping cats to train and join them. Of course, all of this, from a personal backstory to vast power and growth, are things that Scourge had too. What makes Hoot and Jumper different is that their siblings see them at the height of their power, and Barley and Violet, by and large, haven't come to make up or beg for help. They've come to stop them. Seeing the might Barley and Violet have behind them thanks to the clan's help and their own strengths, Hoot and Jumper quickly wither into desperate lackeys again, eager to pin the blame on the very cats who helped them if it will get them out alive. They grew up in a BloodClan that taught them that might makes right, and you should abandon everything else. Now, Barley and Violet's forces are mightier than theirs, so it's time to grovel to them as easily as they've groveled to Scourge before. I think that is the main reason why Barley couldn't even begin to forgive them. In addition to just taking revenge on them for trying to kill Violet, he recognized in their current desperation the very same pattern of behavior that led them to that act in the first place. They haven't changed at all, just recognized how strong Barley currently is. Hoot and Jumper are rotten, and don't currently have an ounce of redeemable behavior in their repertoire. They are Barley's siblings and grew up in the same oppressive BloodClan as he did, which allows us to interpret why they might be the way they are, but we don't have to sympathize with anything we've seen them do, which allows it to be completely satisfying when Barley smacks them in the face and leaves them in the dust, letting his past stay behind him. It's a good book all around, and even with some weaker areas, I'm perfectly happy with what we got. For all three of the manga trilogies we've had so far, I ended up really enjoying the second entry, as they have included cute, character-driven, and/or unique moments that make up the best material the mangas have to offer. With that said, I haven't really liked either of the previous third books, which doesn't exactly bode well for the finale to Ravenpaw's trilogy, but I will remain hopeful for now, at least until I actually reread the book. At the very least, I can say that I honestly enjoyed this book, between the character arcs and relationships it was able to delve into, and the way they connected pieces of the plot and antagonists to our characters to help us care about the proceedings. It's not the best Warriors book, or manga, ever made by this point, but it is a good one, and an enjoyable read. Now all that's left is to get Ravenpaw and Barley returned safely home to their barn. But that will have to wait a short while, as there are a couple more books to go before we can reach the third and final manga in Ravenpaw's trilogy, The Heart of a Warrior, which we'll be able to dive into in a future episode of our trip through time.